Align and Awaken with Mother Earth Rising podcast. Let's rise and heal together with me, Pippa, your Mother Earth healer. Hey guys, welcome back. So I am so excited to be talking to one of the most inspirational daughters of an inspirational man that's, really guided my life for the last couple of years. And I've interviewed quite a lot of amazing people, but this has to be one of the most exciting ones that I'm actually going to be talking about. So please welcome to the show, Serena Dyer, and this is Wayne Dyer's daughter. So I just can't wait to talk to you, Serena.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm sure my dad is present with both of us right now because I can feel your love for him. And so I'm sure he feels that too.
Yeah, he's guided my life. And my partner, Chris, and he's from California. So a lot of where he grew up was obviously especially San Diego down that way. So I know, he's spent a lot of time there at the Hay House, studios and stuff. So there's just so much that your dad has taught us and, just guided us and gave us comfort and got us through all those kind of low days. And I'm just so grateful for him. Even every day is on my gratitude list, every day. Aww. And we kind of watch the same things, or we'll listen to his books, or we'll read the same books. And I think one of my favorites is Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, the Tao Te Ching. That literally changed my whole perception on my whole life. So first, just introduce, what was it like growing up with Wayne as your dad? Because I know he talks about you a lot on his on his different shows and his lectures. And that's why I love it so much, because I feel like I already know you. It's just surreal. I love it.
Well, thank you so much. I would say it wasn't something that I realized was unique at the time, but as I got older, I definitely understood or came to understand that not everybody has parents that are really essentially both my mom and my dad, both very spiritual. And so when I was a kid, I think it just seemed like, well, that's just normal. That's just my parents. But as I got older and I would spend time with other friends and their families, I realized that not everybody meditates. I was taught transcendental meditation when I was 5. So I think that's kind of odd. Most 5-year-olds are not taught meditation. Most people don't have an Uncle Deepak or friends that are very spiritual and really just open-minded. But honestly, I think one of the most unique aspects is that when you grow up in a very spiritual household, there's this idea that you must take responsibility for everything that shows up in your life. And as kids, that meant that there was no such thing as blame. We could never say that we were feeling this way because you made me feel this way. Or, and I think that what happens is that there's a lot of responsibility, I guess, that comes with feeling as though you have to take ownership of everything that shows up in your life, because it's so much easier to be able to say, well, it's that person's fault, or this happened because that person did this to me, or, I am this way because my ex-boyfriend or my teacher. And when you have to take responsibility for yourself and for all of the places that you find yourself in your life, I think that there's an enormous sense of freedom in that. But it's often the case, at least for me as a kid, where I didn't want to take responsibility. And one of the things that my dad would say is that you don't get in life what you want, you get what you are. And so that was a really, I think, unique way of approaching life, with this idea that if you want anything to show up in your life, you have to become it or become like it. So for example, if you want to have more love or be in a loving relationship, you have to be a loving person in order to be in alignment or in harmony with what you're seeking. And I love that. I love the freedom that comes with that. And I love the sense of being the master of your own fate, essentially. But I also think that, as I said before, there's definitely times where you want to blame someone else or something else. And for me, I wrote about this a lot in our book, in The Knowing. I wrote about how there were things that kept happening in my life after my father passed away, my stepson passed away. My husband was arrested and indicted for a business related charge. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. He didn't end up having to go because at the last minute, the judge paused the whole case because the prosecution had lied and withheld evidence during the trial. But anyway, when all of these difficult things kept happening in my life, especially the loss of two very important people to me, my dad and my stepson, because I was raised in this idea that because I was raised in the idea that you get what you are, I kept thinking that I must be bad because all of these bad things are happening, or I must be aligning with them for some reason. And I don't know why that is. And I had this idea that once everything in my life was fixed and was, put into place, then I could have peace. But really, I was raised to know that I had to have peace. I had to find the peace within me first, and then everything would fall into place. And what I've come to understand, I think at this point, is that there are things that happen in our lives that are not because we're a bad person or because we deserve them or because God is a punishing God. But some of these things happen because our soul comes here to grow. At least that's what I was always taught. And that we don't grow by staying the same and never going through any challenges or difficulties. We grow by facing tough situations and finding the strength within us to overcome them. And if we don't find that strength within us, we just keep experiencing the same problem over and over again. It's like the same bad boyfriend keeps showing up in your life, just in different bodies and different names, but it's still the same type of energy. And so for me, it was something that I really had to understand, this idea that the things that were happening in my life were not because I was bad, but I was in alignment with them because I was out of sync with the knowing that I have the ability to find peace within myself, no matter what is happening around me or outside of me. And all of that is because I was raised by very spiritual parents.
It's amazing. And you're so lucky and blessed, because I'm spiritual, but I'm like the oddball of the family because I'm really spiritual, like out there woo woo. And there's no one else in the family apart from a cousin. And it's just, I teach them things, and they know how much, I always talk about Wayne Dyer, this Wayne, because that's like literally he's my teacher. So it's like, they always hear me talking about him. And I remember one thing that always stuck in my mind, what your dad said was, enlightenment through suffering. And that's, my partner, Chris, and I, we'll catch ourselves in low moments and we'll think, well, what would Wayne say? What would Wayne do? And we'll kind of go back to his work and find, but then again, we don't find it. We'll just click on a random YouTube video or we'll read one of his blogs on his website and it'll just be like perfect timing. And I know you wrote about that in the chapter 1, when you lost your dad and you listened to one of his podcasts, and it was that exact podcast that, gave you the comfort that night. And it proper touched me, because they're the moments that a lot of us miss because we're just so wrapped up in, why is this happening to me? And again, the morning of our life, the famous quote, we're in the morning of our life. So everyone's caught up in, why is this happening to me? Why me? This isn't fair. And instead of looking at the suffering as, this is a huge teaching for me, like, what am I going to learn from this? And since we had our shift, quantum shift, as your dad talks about in The Shift, that's like my favorite movie, since I had my quantum shift last year, again, like when I am feeling suffering or, one thing that's happening for me right now is I parted from my partner because he's in New Zealand and I'm in the UK and he's with his children. And because of COVID, we haven't seen each other in like 7 months. And that's been really testing at times because, we're not together in the physical form. And, again, we chose this, we chose to be separated through COVID for whatever reason. And when you kind of come to that peace, like you said, when you find that peace and you realize you chose this, and I have to bring this up because it was in my mind. I was laughing when I was getting ready earlier on. I thought one of the stories that really makes me laugh every time I listen to it is when you were little and you were like questioning your dad about, you know, like about your parents, and you said, I think something like, so you're saying that I chose you, and he was like, yeah, and you said, oh, I must have been in a rush, and I just like, it makes me laugh because again, you know, your creative mind, again, you know, you were questioning things, and you know, your parents would always let you decide, and I kind of go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that it really is such a unique way to go through life, because when you go through life, like you just said, like the separation that you're having right now from your partner, there are two ways to look at it. One is as though life isn't fair, and you know, bad things happen, and this is out of your control, and you can think all those things, and you'll be right. That will be right, and you'll be telling the truth because it's what you believe about your situation. But the other way to look at it is as though everything is in divine perfect order. And my question for anybody that's choosing to look at life as though bad things happen and you know, everything's out of their control, the question really is, does that give you a sense of peace? Does that bring you closer to God or to the highest part of yourself? Or does that make you feel as though at any given moment, you know, the rug can basically get pulled out from underneath you, and you live in a world where there's a punishing God that withholds cures from some people and grants favors to others? It's like, there's two ways to look at it. And I can tell you that for me, when my dad passed away, I had a certain level of grief that was obviously enormous because we were very close, but I had always loved him and adored him, and he always loved me. So there was no guilt, there was no regret, there was no fear in the losing of him. It was just a sadness, a profound sadness that I wasn't going to have him in the way I always had, you know, as my dad. But I didn't have any fear or guilt over this. But when I lost my stepson, who died at 19 and had an accidental drug overdose that took his life, you know, here we have somebody who's young, who didn't have 75 years of living, somebody who you could absolutely argue his life was cut too short, or that he didn't get to, you know, live the number of years that we would have liked. And the cause of his death was an accident. So here we have all of the makings of the perfect opportunity to view this as an accident and a tragedy and something that that God did to us, or God did to him. But the way my husband and I have chosen to look at his passing is through the lens of believing that even his 19 years was perfect. The time he was born and the time he left, that it was all in perfect order, and that God didn't take his life too soon, that he came here and only had 19 years to live because that's all his soul needed in this lifetime. And that the time he left, the time he died, was the right time, and that there were no accidents. That if we live in a universe where there's, you know, everything is in divine perfect order, then how could we question that and say that this was an accident? Perhaps there's a way of looking at this that says he had 19 years and that was what his soul needed in this lifetime, and that was it. And that, you know, the real question is, like, of course it's, you know, it's a lot harder to do that with a child. It's a lot harder to do that when somebody so young dies. But which way of looking at it brings us closer to peace and closer to feeling Mason, my stepson, and even feeling a closeness to God? It's like, how do you want to look at life? Do you want to look at it as though there are just random occurrences that happen and take people from you and there's no explanation for it?
Yeah.
Or do you want to look at it as though, you know, there's something bigger than us that's moving the pieces? And even though we might not always like it or agree with it, one day we'll understand why it had to be this way, and it will all make sense.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, it's like that's the key about how you're going to go through life. Are you going to go through life where everything is, you know, everybody else's fault, or, you know, God just doesn't like you, or you're unlucky? Or are you going to go through life and think that you are given this opportunity to come here? This is the classroom, essentially, and when we die, we go home. And some of us just need less time in the classroom.
Yeah.
And
And
that's the way
that life. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really the way we've chosen to look at everything. And the truth is nobody really will know, right? We don't have any scientific proof. We can't ever prove anything one way or the other. But I can tell you that I feel a connection to my dad. I feel a connection to Mason when I am living from that place.
Yeah.
And if I can't have them here in the physical sense, obviously I want to be able to connect with them on a spiritual level. And when I'm in that place of viewing everything as though it was in divine, perfect order, I can actually feel them, and I feel closer to them and closer to God. And who wouldn't want that?
Exactly. And one of my favorite quotes is, you can be a host to God or a hostage to your ego. That literally sums up what you've just said, because again, when you're not in alignment with God, with universe, with whatever you resonate with, it's harder to get to those levels, those vibrations, because that's what I'm going through now with my partner. You know, we're not here physically in the 3D, but in that 5D level, you know, that's where we're connecting in meditation, and we're trying to, you know, because we're already connected in soul level that way anyway. So I remember one thing that really stuck with me is, because I know you've wrote the book with your dad too, is Don't Die With Your Music Still in You. And that, you know, the death of Ivan Illich, like that story, like that your dad talks about, that hit home for me and Chris, because, you know, like getting to the end of your life and thinking, is your life all wrong? I just was like, that is like the worst. That is like one of my worst fears, because that would just be just a tragedy, you know, that you've not lived, you know, you're not let your music out of you. And again, we all have our own tune, we all have our own vibration, but ultimately we're all one. And that's one thing that the Tao is like what I follow, and I try and teach my clients and my family and my friends to connect back to nature, connect to that oneness, connect to something that, you know, that we can't see with our physical eye, we can't touch it, but we can feel it, we can connect to it. And that's it. It changed my life. And I think when you said about connecting to peace, it is about asking yourself the question, you know, does it bring you peace? Because if it doesn't, you know, how can you connect to peace more? And
who doesn't want to have more peace, right? I mean, peace is the place where we can get into harmony with all of the things that we want to have show up in our lives. You know, we want more money, we want more love, we want more health, we want all of these different things. We don't get those things by chasing after them. It's like the idea is like, you know, wanting to be friends with somebody, but going after them, running down the street, trying to get them, they're going to run from you. But when you are in a place where you are just in harmony with what it is you're seeking, then the universe can't help but provide it. And when you are in a state of peace, you are vibrating at a, you know, we know that is true. We know that everything is energy, including our thoughts. That's not like a woo-woo, hocus pocus, airy fairy type of idea. It's, you know, Einstein proved it. Everything is energy, and everything, even at the subatomic particle level, what they have found is that this is something that my dad used to always say: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. A lot of people think that's just a clever play on words, but it's actually based on this study that was done in quantum physics, which showed that at the subatomic particle level, the particles that they were looking at under a big microscope behaved differently based on who was doing the looking. So the particles that are, you know, the energy, the mass was vibrating differently based on whoever was looking at it. So what does that say? When you change the way you approach any situation, when you change your thoughts, when you change your behavior, when you change your views on things, what you're doing is you're literally bringing a different energy to that situation. And as a result, the situation itself changes. And I think it's just proof right there that when you are in a state inside of yourself of being, you know, being at peace or feeling love or feeling abundant, you can't help but get into alignment with those things. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that it's, you know, the secret is that you just have to want it and then it will come into your life. But the problem with that is that you can't sit on the couch all day wanting a six-pack abs and eating, you know, popcorn and bonbons. It's like the Tao is really essentially speaks of that same thing. It's like you have to have a desire, right? So the desire is the wanting, but then at the same time, there's the allowing. And it sounds as though those are two opposites, desiring or wanting and allowing, but really they're just two different points on the same continuum. You desire the health, the good body, the physical fitness, and then you allow yourself to take the steps that you need to do so. And so there's two aspects of getting in harmony with everything that you're seeking. And I think that a lot of people got really hooked on The Secret and they think they can just want it, but you actually have to become like it. And then the universe can't help but provide it.
Yeah, because that's The Secret was kind of like my turning point with spirituality, like about 6 years ago. Like I watched The Secret and I was like, wow, blown away. But then now where I'm at now, I remember someone, I think it was Greg Braden, who's on The Secret. He talked about quantum shifts and I was like, what the hell is a quantum shift? And I knew nothing about it. And then when I actually had a quantum shift, it all made sense, because again, it's what's so crazy too is my partner, Chris, he's background science. And whenever we do talks or we just educate, because he's a teacher too, Chris's life is so similar to your dad's in the scale of like what he went through, as in like, his dad, he was in the army, everything that it was like similar lives. And I remember Chris would like talk about something like about, when you break down a particle or a cell, or even the deep Hubble field, like we talk about it. And then like a month later, we'd watch one of your dad's lectures that we hadn't seen before. And your dad would talk about it and we'd be like, hang on a minute. So like, it was just so uncanny how it just worked out. And just so many things that he would talk about and we'd resonate with. And the deep Hubble field is something I watch weekly, if not daily, because I sit and think, wow, like we're just on this ball in the middle of this universe. And I know like how excited your dad got talking about it, because he'd just be blown away by it too. Because again, when you connect to that, like life is happening for you and not to you. What I like about what you and Saje have done in your book as well, which obviously I can't wait to talk about that, is you've said when you challenge the way you look at things, because again, people see challenges as like you get to a wall and you can't get through it. Whether you see a challenge as something where it's, you learn from it. Again, like you came to earth to learn, to teach, to whatever you need to learn in this life. So, and I love how you explain about, it being the lighthouse, because that, I always talk about that as in, if you're lost, look for the lighthouse. And, the lighthouses don't go out finding boats, they stand there strong and the boats come to them. So that's about shining your light. So for me, before we get to your book, there's something that I do want you to talk about, which really like you speaking about it on stage with your dad helped me see things differently, and my partner too, because my partner was studying law. And I gave him a book when we started dating, and it was The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and that changed how he saw law. It was the thing to do, for money and wealth and things like that. And then when he had a shift too, where he watched you on stage about how your dad just kind of was like not bothered about, because you were so like worried about not doing law. So like how did that like work? And like again, like tell the audience like how easy it was to be like that with your dad.
Yeah, so I was getting a master's degree, and I knew that as long as I stayed in school, my dad would financially support me. And I was in my 20s, I think my early 20s at the time. And I decided I was going to apply to law school because, well, that would be 3 more years of support. And I liked school, and I liked the idea of being able to tell stories. And that's really what I thought of when I thought of the law, was that, you're up in a courtroom and you're telling a story, and you're convincing people of whatever case you're arguing. And so I just liked the idea of doing that. And I was in law school for a few months, and I got really sick. I had pneumonia, and I ended up missing a whole week of school. And in law school, that's a lot to miss a whole week. You're really behind if you miss a week. And I remember just feeling like overwhelmed with having to catch up with all this work. And I remember my dad saying to me, Serena, you've been getting sick a lot since you started law school. Do you think it's possible that you're going to a place every day that you don't like, that you don't want to be, and you're doing something that ultimately is not in alignment with what you came here to do, but you're sticking with it because you have a fear of what other people are going to think if you leave. And that was absolutely true. I was staying in law school, which was a place I very quickly realized I did not want to be. Doing work I knew I did not want to do for the rest of my life, but I was willing to stick it out because I was more concerned with other people thinking I was a failure or a quitter or a loser than I was with continuing to do something that I really despised just to, protect my reputation or something. And anyway, I remember when my dad said that, and I thought, basically what he was telling me was that he would not be mad at me if I left. He would be totally supporting my leaving law school, and that I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to do something and stick with it just because other people might think poorly of me for leaving. And so ultimately I ended up leaving, and I thought that would kind of fix everything in my life. And it really didn't. I really did feel this sense of I'm not doing anything. And so I must be worth nothing, because I was really caught up in this idea that everything about me was contingent upon what I was doing. So if I was doing nothing, then I was nothing. And I was raised to know better, and I was raised to view life differently. But, like I said, it doesn't matter how great of parents you have or how spiritual they are. You still have to go through things on your own. And you still have to really get the lesson for yourself. And it wasn't until a few months after I left law school that I was at one of my dad's talks, and he was giving a lecture. And I just happened to be there. I was visiting him in Maui at the time. So I went to his lecture, and I was just sitting there, and he was talking to the audience, but I really felt like he was speaking just to me. And he said, you don't want to get to the end of your life and realize that you spent your life doing something or in a relationship with someone or believing in something that doesn't resonate with your soul, all because your ego is telling you that if you don't do these things, or you're not with this person, or you don't believe in these things, people are going to be upset, or your mom is going to be disappointed, or your children are going to resent you. And he was saying, you have a purpose. And he was saying this to a large audience. You all have a purpose, something that calls to you, that excites your soul. And it's only through getting in sync with that, in touch with that you really can begin to feel, the divine guidance that's available to us at all times, or the universe starts sending you all green lights. But you have to get yourself in harmony with that. And I remember after the talk, saying to him, you told the audience not to die with their music still in them. And I feel like you're telling that to me, but I don't know what excites my soul. I don't know what I'm passionate about. And I remember him saying, you don't have to know, but do you know how you want to feel? And I said, well, of course, I want to feel at peace. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel connected to humanity and to God and to my highest self. I want to feel that connection and that peace that comes from feeling fulfilled in my life on a deeply spiritual level. And I remember him saying, then focus on that. Even if you are not in a place in your life where you are feeling that every day, where you're feeling content or fulfilled or in harmony, even if you're not actually feeling those things right now, start assuming the feeling. Start bringing into your body that feeling and what that would feel like and how your life would look, and imagine it. Use your imagination to picture it, but not just place it in your mind. Start to actually feel those things. Yeah. And so I would do that. And that's really essentially what you were saying before, the quantum physics thing. It's like Albert Einstein said that imagination is everything. It's the preview of life's coming attractions. What you place into your imagination and you feel in your body, you create for yourself. And so it really is the preview of life's coming attractions, because if you can imagine it, you are going to be able to create it or to get in alignment with it. And so for me, that's all I started to do, was think about how I wanted to feel. And then I would start to feel that. And I would imagine myself waking up in the morning, feeling fulfilled, and going to bed, feeling content. And I would just imagine it all the time. And what happened as a result of that was that I started to write out stories of what it had been like to grow up with very spiritual parents, to have Wayne Dyer as my dad. Because like I said, all I wanted to do was tell stories. I just wanted to be a storyteller, but I didn't know what that really would mean for a career. So I started to just write these stories out. And then my dad invited me to go on a book tour with him where I would just introduce him. And everybody would always ask my brothers and sisters and myself at any of his talks, what is your dad really like? Is he really this guy that walks his talk? And so my dad said, why don't you come on the road with me and introduce me and tell some of these stories that you've been working on? So I did. And then from there, his publisher offered up me a book deal to actually write those out. And we ended up titling, my dad wrote the book with me, and we titled it Don't Die With Your Music Still in You, because that was the thing that he had said to the audience when I was sitting in it, that really stuck with me, that I didn't want to get to the end of my life and not have done what I was meant to do or what called to me just because I was afraid of what other people would think. Or anyway, we wrote that one together, and it was because that was the one lesson that really was the catalyst for getting me on the path of doing this work of speaking and sharing and writing and telling stories. And my sister and I just wrote our new book, and it's really, again, it's just telling stories that resonate with people. And I never would have thought I could have a career doing that, but here I am.
It's amazing. And again, talk about the music, don't die with music still in you. It just, when you think of that, you all has, again, purpose, the Dharma, like everything has a Dharma, like your dad talks about all the time, like, an ant has a Dharma, a hyena has a Dharma. And I love how he says, a hyena couldn't do an ant's job. You have a specific Dharma. And when you connect to that, again, the ego wants to, for me, it fit how I was like kind of not raised, but because I didn't have spiritual parents, I was raised in, get a 9-to-5 job, get a good job that, again, like your dad said, gives you tenure. We don't have that here. And it was kind of seeing the thing to do. But for me, I was like, I don't want to sit in an office 9-to-5. I would literally go insane sat in an office 9-to-5. And as I got more spiritual and more awake, more aware, I just realized that you all have, specific purposes, dharmas, very similar, especially with light workers. That I like healing. I do a lot of healing. So everyone has similar things, but for you, your music is your tune. And my ego, before I did a lot of ego work, my ego would be like, well, they're doing this, and if you do something different, you're going to look weird, and I was always kind of comparing myself to other people. And I used to think, well, I want to be my own person. I want to be a leader. I want to be different. I want to stand out. I want to just, because it helps other people stand out, because they think, well, Pip's doing it, so does that mean that I can do it? It's just kind of like a ripple effect for me. And again, like, your dad's teachings, how many people that affected, and then how many people affected from it. All I teach my clients and my family and my friends is your dad's work. I'll just buy them your dad's books. Like, that's what I do for gifts. I just get books and send them, and because it's getting the message out. It's how it works. And yeah, I was actually going to ask you like a really hard question, but you probably will have a few of them. But what's one of your like favorite memories of your dad? Like, what is one of the ones that just stands out the most?
Oh, wow. So many. I was on a cruise with him in 2000, I think it was 2013, maybe, 2013, maybe 2012. We went on a cruise. He was doing a cruise where he was going to give lectures all over Europe, and people were going to come on the cruise and listen to him give, I don't know, let's say 3 or 4 different talks over the course of 10 days. And we were going to go to several holy sites. And I wanted to go because I wanted to go on a free cruise, but also because I liked going with him and listening to him talk. And we got to this place. It was called Ephesus in Turkey. And we were going there because it was where Jesus's mother, where Mary had a home. And it's believed that she lived out the last several years of her life there at this house that's still standing. And you can go and do a tour there. So my dad was going to give a lecture at this home of Jesus's mother. So obviously I was a religion major in college. This was a huge opportunity for me to go and be in this holy, sacred place and be there with my dad and all these people that were like-minded, that really, loved his work. And when we got to Ephesus, when we got off the cruise ship and we were getting ready to board the bus that was going to take all of us to where he was giving this talk, there was a woman that was standing there, and she had a sign, and the sign said, "Hi, Wayne, it's Mariam." I think it's Mariam, but I guess in America, sometimes they say Miriam, but she pronounces it Mariam. And when my dad saw her, he was, going to just kind of like say, "Oh, hi, how are you? Nice to see you," and get on the bus. And he goes to, say hello and then keep going and walk past her. And then he stops and he said, "Mariam from Iran?" And she said, "Yes." And they both started crying. And my dad said, "Oh my God, I cannot believe you're here. What are you doing here?" And he was like, "Serena, this is Mariam." And they were both just so emotional over it that I was obviously like, "Oh, well, who's Mariam?" And she was a woman who had been translating my dad's work from English to Farsi, even though his books were not allowed in Iran. She had been translating them in secret and putting them out to other people in her country in secret, really risking potentially her life or her freedom for doing so. And she and my dad had been pen pals for years. And this was a woman who had traveled from Iran to Turkey because she knew my dad was going to be there. And she was risking her life getting his work out into the world. And once my dad explained to me who she was, and he invited her to come with us to where he was going to be giving the talk at Jesus's mother's house. And she came on the bus with us, and she spent the afternoon with us, and she came to his talk with us. And I sat next to her during his lecture at this house in Ephesus. And she just sat there and sobbed the entire time that he spoke. And so I sat there next to her and sobbed because I could feel the love. I could feel the true love that she had for my dad, and that she had spent years helping spread his work with enormous personal risk to herself. And I just was blown away that here was one man who had listened to the calling of his own soul, his own Dharma, and in doing so changed so many people's lives. And the love I could feel that he had for her as well, it was just so incredibly powerful to witness that, and to witness it in a holy place with all of these people around. And obviously that's more of, I guess, a story about her, but it was just this feeling of just enormous gratitude in that moment that I got to witness that. And so I went back to when we left and we said bye to Mariam, I went back to the cruise ship and I wrote my dad a letter. And he ended up reading the letter on his last PBS show that he recorded. And he loved the letter that I wrote so much that he asked his friend, who was a songwriter, to take my letter and turn it into a song. And my sister Sky then would sing the song. And at my wedding, my dad and I had our father-daughter dance to the song that was written, that was based on my letter. And it's a song that obviously means the world to me, because it the letter that I wrote to him just poured out of me after getting to experience that whole situation with Mariam in Ephesus. And for it all to have then got turned into a song that we danced to at my wedding, I would say that's one of my all-time favorite
Yeah.
experiences and memories with my dad is so special to me. And every time I see a video of him reading that letter, it just brings me right back to that day. And getting to meet Mariam, who I'm still in touch with now, who I still email with. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, just something so like you were in the moment of that energy, and you could feel it. Like I could feel it when you were talking. I'm just, again, it's just in awe of the gratitude and how like grateful, and someone who is risking their life to share you. I know I would, because that's how much it said that she believed, she believed in what he was saying. And it's crazy you mentioned about the holy tours that I used to do, because I remember like listening to some of them that he did. And one of the ones that resonated the most was Assisi, St. Francis. And he used to talk about him all the time. And, I was brought up Catholic, but I don't follow Catholic anymore. Like I don't have any like religion. I'm just kind of like spiritual. But I remember I turned 30 last year, and with COVID and stuff, we came out of lockdown, and my partner was in the UK with me. And I wrote a list of what I desired in 2020, if COVID, whatever. I just wrote down what I wanted. And I said I wanted to go to Assisi for my 30th. And we actually went. We did a week. We did a week in Portugal, and then we went to Rome, and we got the train just for one night to Assisi. And I remember when we watched The Shift, when it obviously first came out, and I remember him talking about his miraculous healing and St. Francis coming to him. And I was reading There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. So I was kind of like in the whole energy of Assisi, and I'm like, oh, he's the saint of the animals, and I love animals. My partner's an animal fanatic. He's got a PhD in animal physiology. So we're kind of like, St. Francis is huge for us. And right. I can't explain the energy that whenever I walked in Assisi, I just seen your dad everywhere. It was like we went to his healing moment where he's on the steps. We went everywhere, and we just followed where he was. And even in the town, and we went down to St. Francis' tomb, and me and my partner Chris, we just sobbed. Like as soon as we walked. Have you been to Assisi? Have you been yet?
I was there with my dad actually. And we went to the tomb, and I actually had something incredible happen that I'll share with you. So we were in Assisi, and when I was growing up, we had the prayer of St. Francis framed in the hallway of our home, right outside of my bedroom when I was a little kid. Bedroom I shared with a couple of my sisters. And our dad used to say that the prayer of St. Francis is not just a prayer, that it is a technology, that it is an actual technology for how to live your life. Mm-hmm. That St. Francis is not saying, dear God, I don't have any peace. Why don't I have any peace? My mother-in-law is not allowing me to have any peace. Or he's saying, dear God, let me be an instrument of thy love. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. So in other words, he is saying to God, to the universe, St. Francis is saying, let me become like what it is I am seeking, and let me offer it to others first. And my dad used to say that is the secret to the universe, that you have to become like it. If you want love and there's no love in your life, put love there and you will find it and you will create it, that you become like what you are seeking. So when we were in Assisi, I kept having the prayer of St. Francis go through my mind. Yeah. And I thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this like my mantra almost, like, and all I'm going to say each day when my mind starts to wander, starts to have this monkey mind of 1,000 thoughts, I'm just going to start as much as I can, as much as I remember, to bring it back to, how may I serve? How may I serve? Dear God, just please let me be an instrument of thy work, of thy love. Just use me however you can. And I was saying that, and I was doing that, and I really felt just so enormously peaceful. So we leave Assisi and we get to Lourdes, which Lourdes in France is where there's this grotto, this water flows through these caves, and the water that flows through there was discovered by Bernadette, who ended up being made into a saint. And she had visions of Mother Mary telling her to dig there, and that she would find this water, and that this water would be very healing. So there are people that come from all over the world to get in this water. And there are miracles that have happened from this water. And so people get in line, and the line is very long, and it lasts all day, because one at a time you go in and you take all of your clothes off, and the nuns dip you in the water. and you say a prayer with them and you set your intention, and then you get dressed, and then, the next person comes, and so it's, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, it takes a while. And so we were in Lourdes, my dad and a bunch of people that were traveling with him, and my brother and my sister, and a couple different people in the course of like an hour had said to us, have you done the water? Have you done the dipping in the water yet? And we said no. And we weren't going to have time to do it because the line closed at 2:30 because it was a 2.5 hour wait and the nuns had to leave by 5. So they said, this one woman in our group said, well, maybe if you run over there right now, you might still be able to get in. It was like 2:20. So my brother and sister and I, because we had been told to do this, now it was like the third time in 1 hour, we were like, all right, fine, maybe there's a sign here, we should just go do it. So we go to the line, and there's nobody in line for the men. So my brother just goes right in, but the women's line is 2.5 hours long and it's closed. So we don't get to go in. There's a woman though from our group, and she's already in the line and the gate is closed. And she goes up to the priest who's controlling basically the gate, who's closing the gate, who's now closed the gate essentially. And she says, please, there's these 2 young women. They came from America all this way. Can you please just let them come in? They can take my spot in line. And there's all these other nuns. I mean, literally they're in nun habits asking the same thing. Please, this is our last chance. We're from China or Africa. Please, can you let us in? And he says, I'm sorry, I can't. I have to close the line by 2:30. And so he's about to say to this woman in our group, no, he can't let us in. And sorry, I get thirsty when I talk so much. He says, I'm sorry, I can't, I have to keep the line closed. I can't let other people in. And she's gesturing to my sister Saje and I, and he looks over at us and he stops and he looks right at me and he says, wait, her, you want to let her in? And she says, yes, her and her sister. And he says, I will let her in. And I'm standing there and I'm like all of a sudden terrified because I'm thinking, why is he going to let me in? And so he gestures for Saje and I to come over, and he says, you may come in. You can cut the line. You can go right up to the front. And I said, can my sister too? And he said, yes, you both can. And I said, well, why? And he said, because I saw what you did yesterday. And I said, what did I do? And he said, I was in that cafe. And I thought, oh my God.
I'm getting goosebumps.
The day before, during my regular, dear God, please let me be an instrument of thy peace, of thy work, my regular mantra that was going through my mind, just asking how I may serve. We were crossing the street and I saw a woman, a little old lady in this cafe by herself. And her walker that she had, this like walker, fell over and was on the floor. And so I just stopped when we were crossing the street and I just looked in to see if anybody was going to get up. And I didn't see anybody get up right away to help her. So I just walked in the cafe. I picked up her walker and I said, oh, here you go. Let me help you with that. And she said, thank you. And I said, God bless you. And she said, you too. And I helped her get up and helped her get down the path with her walker after kind of picking it up for her. But that was all I did. And the priest said, I saw you do that for her. And because of that random act of kindness that you did when nobody was watching, I will do one back for you and I will let you cut the line. And I was sobbing and I was so moved and so touched because I knew in that moment that if we go through life asking, how may I serve, instead of what's in it for me?
Yeah.
If we go through life asking, how may I serve? The universe serves us back tenfold. Now, obviously, we don't want that to be the reason we do it, but it is always the outcome. The universe cannot help but give you back what you are. And if you are a person of service, always coming from that place of wanting to help others, of kindness, of love, of gratitude, the universe will give you those experiences back. And I had that with getting to not only cut the line, which was 2.5 hours long, but with getting that confirmation that here was one random act of kindness that I did only because I was in that place of asking to be of service. And somebody really important saw, remembered, and wanted to show me that the universe would serve me back. And I felt like it was just such a gift, such a sign from God, that if I always make a point, no matter how much you slip up or how much I might forget at times, if I make it a point of getting back to that place of asking how I may serve instead of what's in it for me, that the universe will not be able to help but just provide more and more opportunities that keep me in alignment with what my highest self wants, which is to feel the presence of God in every moment.
It's beautiful.
And it was incredible.
That's exactly what your dad did in Assisi. He just did a random act of kindness, didn't think what was in it for me. You know, he just did it and he had that healing, and it just inspires me. And that's kind of like, you know, we can come on to obviously your book now, because I feel like that, you know, especially, you know, your dad writing so many books. And I know one that really touched my partner was the wishes fulfilled, you know, assume the wish fulfilled, because again, that's what we're going through now, assuming that, you know, I'm already in New Zealand and I'm with my partner and we're doing the things that we want to do. But how long have you been writing your book? Is it kind of like something that's been going on since, you know, is it, obviously you wrote it with Saje, which is beautiful to write it with your sister?
Yeah, we both, I would say about maybe a year or so after he passed away, we had both been writing, and we kind of realized that we were writing a lot of the similar stories, but obviously just from our different perspectives. And so we just decided to put them together because it didn't make sense to have two different books with sort of the same stories in them. And so we started putting those together, and then we kind of shopped it around to different publishing houses, and we ended up getting a deal with this one publishing house, Sounds True. And you know, then we worked with an editor to get it like all, you know, finalized and put together. And it just came out about 2 weeks ago. And it's called The Knowing. And the reason we titled it The Knowing was because throughout the book, throughout each of our writing, there was this theme that just kept coming up. That is like, each of us has this inner knowing, this inner voice. And you could call it your intuition, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it matters. But there's this place within each of us that has that is where we have this knowing, and this knowing of just, you know, it's almost like having a compass or a guide inside of us. And when we stay connected to it, when we stay connected to that presence, that feeling, that intuition, or that voice of God, when we stay connected to it, we find ourselves in flow with the universe, or in harmony. And when we fight it and shame it or shut it up or ignore it, it's when we have the life of Ivan Illich. It's when we get to the end of our lives and think, I lived a lie. I lived a life that was wrong because I was afraid of letting someone else down, or I was afraid of what other people would think, or, you know, all these things that are just thoughts that the ego has. But within each of us, there is a knowing. There is a place where, you know, as I wrote about in the book, I would call it my inner Tahiti, because of the quote from Moby Dick, where he says, "For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man lies one insular Tahiti, filled with peace and joy, but surrounded by all the horrors of the half-lived life." And it's like inside of us is this insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but surrounded by a half-lived life. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can connect with that part of you that sometimes I jokingly call it my inner Maui, because Maui is paradise for me. But it's like the inner Maui. It's the inner place where I can feel the presence of God. And when I am coming from that place, when I am cleaning up the link to that place, essentially through meditation, through prayer, through asking, how may I serve? When I am in harmony with that, all of the answers, all of the miracles, all of the green lights, they just show up. And we think, oh my God, that's crazy, or that's such a miracle. And I think that the universe probably, or God probably laughs and says, well, that's just the way it is. When you are in harmony, everything falls into place. And you don't have to do anything. In fact, you do nothing and you leave nothing undone. Like, like it's said in the Tao, you come from that place and you don't have to be anyone. You don't have to try. You don't have to strive. You just come from that place within you where your inner Maui is, and everything falls into place.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I can't wait to read the rest of it. I mean, obviously it's out now. I just can't wait. I've pre-ordered mine, so I can't wait to read the rest of it. Like chapter 1 just hooked me in. I was thinking, because again, people love storytelling, and that's what writing's all about. It's just telling stories, and people relate to those stories. And I think, obviously, I've not read all of your dad's books yet. Like that's my goal, to read them all. But I know you said like you hadn't really listened to his podcast much, and then when you clicked one on that night, it was the exact right one. That's happened to me so many times. If I feel down, I'll just click on a YouTube video, or I'll listen to one of his audio books. I'll just pick a book up, whatever it is, and I just think, yeah, he's speaking to me in that exact chapter. So what would like one of your favorite like talks or favorite things that he talks about that really resonates with you?
I would say that for me as his daughter, it's actually not something that he said. It's something that I witnessed firsthand, which was I did not have a parent or parents that said, follow your dreams or go out and do what is calling to you, what you dream of doing, what you're excited about, while they were sitting at a desk ignoring their own dreams. I didn't have parents that told me to follow my dreams while they sacrificed their own. I had parents that lived their dharma, that wouldn't take no for an answer, that even though at times my dad especially had to miss some things of mine growing up, or miss, our basketball game or a play or something that we were doing in school, it never bothered me because he was out there doing what he came here to do. Yeah. And I believe that parents, sometimes what they're doing is so loud, their children can't hear what they're saying. And my dad was not saying, go follow your dreams and giving up on his own. He was living his. And I believe that on a really like gut soul level, that gave me like some kind of subconscious permission to do the same. That when you see somebody you love going after what they love, and you see them doing the work that they came here to do, and not sacrificing their dharma for anything or anyone. I mean, as his child, I just loved seeing him do what he loved to do. And I think that getting to experience that firsthand, having parents, my mom always said her dharma was to be a mother, and that was what she wanted to do with her life. And she did 7 times over. And so I think that having parents that lived what they came here to do and didn't sacrifice it for anyone else, and didn't take no for an answer, and didn't give up on their dreams because it got hard, or because other people told them that they wouldn't make it, or they lived their soul's purpose. And I think that it gave me some kind of permission to do exactly that myself. And I'm so grateful for that. So I would say that was the greatest lesson that he gave me. Yeah,
it's amazing. It obviously goes back to my partner. He talks about like he really resonates with the non-interference, because my partner has 2 young children, 10 and 6. So sometimes when they test him a lot, because of their ages, he always goes like, okay, Wayne, with non-interference, how do you get him to eat without like making him eat? And like, just like, he really resonates with that stuff, because again, your dad had 8 children. So he got the experience with it. So that, for my partner, Chris, really helped him sit with the non-interference part of stuff, because again, you've got to, be a parent, but let them kind of just flow with life. It is beautiful, and you're so blessed.
Oh, thank you.
So yes, I will put all of the links to how to find you, the book, to order it. I know obviously in the UK it is on pre-order for Amazon. So obviously anyone, I would definitely recommend to get it, knowing in you, like obviously people searching for that, it's within you. It's nothing you can go out and find. It's within you, isn't it? And again, you got to connect to that piece. So I'm so thankful for your time, Serena. Just really grateful to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you too.
Yes, we'll take care. Thanks for listening, guys. I really hope you took amazing inspiration from Wayne Dyer's daughter, because I definitely did. And I'm going to carry on listening to Wayne always, every single day, as something that I listen to. So I hope you really enjoyed the interview, and yeah, enjoy the book, guys. Chat to you soon. Bye.